Greetings. Today I'm going to talk about motivation, positivity, self-help, and the law of attraction. That's also the title of the video. You know, back in 2004, I came across The Secret, the movie The Secret. And it was a fluke. I can't even remember how I came across it because it was only being sold online and it was coming from Australia. But I found it. I know it was 2004 because of what happened after I got it. I got the movie probably around the beginning of April of 2004. And, you know, came in the DVD. So I watched it and it was fascinating. And it kind of gave me some inspiration. I felt good about it. So I shared it with my ex and she loved it. And I decided, you know what, it's time for me to have a different mindset. Because over the course of pretty much 3 years, I had a horrible mindset. My dad had passed away. I was having trouble, you know, getting good gigs because I was self-employed. I was marketing stuff out there. I wasn't getting a whole lot of contacts. Things just weren't going well. So I first decided, you know what, I need to write myself a mantra, which I actually have above me now, which says, today I'm going to have fun, be prosperous and healthy, and live my life to the fullest. And at the time, my computer and my desk were on the other side of, well, the room than where it is now. And it was on the side of my computer. And so every day when I came into the office, I would see that. And I just felt really good. Now, what happened is that 3 weeks later, I actually got, I can't really call it a gig, but what happened is that someone called me and said that I had been recommended to help fix their computer. And I said, okay, sure, bring it over. So she brought it over and she left it with me for a while. And I fixed it and I got paid for it. And the thing was that was the first money I had made in 2004. I mean, things were getting really tight. My ex and I were looking at the possibility of having to maybe file for bankruptcy. It was just really bad. But that happened 3 weeks after. And then a week after that, I get a call from someone I knew who said, there's this gig that's down in New Jersey and they're willing to pay $100 an hour. I'm like, yes, jump on that. Now, when I got down there, I found out after a week that they were willing to come up to $175 an hour. Would have been nice, but it might have caused me some other issues that I'm really glad I didn't find out about at the time. But still, $100 an hour. And it led me to a 2-year period where I made a little over $400,000 in 2 years. Those were the great days. Still, it was one of those kind of things where I watched the movie, I felt this positivity in me, I felt this motivation, and I started thinking about the law of attraction. The thing is that I didn't quite do it the way that the movie did it, because the movie had different examples of people concentrating on a certain thing and saying, you know, get that in your mind and this is how this is going to work. And that's not really what I did. What I did was I felt better. My mindset changed and I said, you know what? It's time for me to kind of up my game and put certain things out there. And I started doing more positive things. And more positive things started to happen. They weren't totally related to what I had been doing, but in my mind, I saw the act of doing something positive changed my mindset, and it kind of, in a weird way, changed the world. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, like the movie did, that just thinking about positive things is really going to change your life all the time. But okay, let me rephrase that. It's going to change your life because if you can find something to concentrate on that makes you feel better, you've already changed your life for the better. But is it going to make you rich? It could, it might not. Is it going to help you find someone to fall in love with? It could, and it might not. It all depends on how you feel about it and what it gets you to change. So let's talk a little bit more about The Secret if I can. When the movie came out, you know, just like it is now, it has critics and it has people who watched it, and you have these approvals. So IMDb, or the Internet Movie Database, has the two rankings. So they had the rankings for the critics, and the critics only gave it 5.5 out of 10. But the people who watched it, 87% of the people who watched it liked the movie. Still like the movie. I still like the movie. I watch it at least 3 times a year. Sometimes I just put it on in the background and I listen to it. I love the sound of the music. It was very well produced. My God. This lady, Rhonda Byrne, put this thing together fantastic. You know, if she knew anything about fiction, she might be able to make a Marvel movie. Which is a little goofy, but there you go. Now, here's the thing. They had all these different experts, people who in some way believed in the law of attraction or positivity or motivation without necessarily saying it. Some of them definitely said it, but in some ways, you know, it was just all this positivity. I mean, really, that was the point of the movie. I mean, I guess if you had some negative people in there, that would have been a bad thing. I decided to highlight what some of these people did or do or whatever, or what they said in the movie, because it's important to what I want to get to later on. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, the first person, is this guy named John Assaraf. And actually, he's the one who led me to do this video today, because a friend of mine sent me this link earlier in the week talking about something called a brainathon that was going to be run by John Assaraf. I knew the name because I liked what he had to say in that movie all those years ago. So I decided, you know what, let me sign up for this. Let's find out what it is. And truthfully, I bounced about 20 minutes into it because it was somewhat getting on my nerve. He led with someone else doing this talking, and the woman just sounded like she was screaming. And then when he came on, he sounded like he was yelling. And the thing is, I thought it was going to be a live presentation when I signed up for it. I could tell it was pre-recorded. I researched later on and found out that they actually run this thing more than once a year. So it's a common thing. How come he just got it? I don't know. I know how come I just got it because of him. And they actually had like the commentary on the side, you know, where people sign in and they can say anything. And just before I shut it down, someone had written, "Please stop shouting. It's driving me nuts." So I wasn't the only one thinking that. Anyway, this is a guy, John Assaraf, who used to be kind of a gang member. And he dropped out of school early. And, you know, he led a kind of a bad life for a while. But then he figured out his way to basically change his life for the better. And one of the things that he talked about in the movie was creating these vision boards. And truthfully, after The Secret came out, a lot of people were making vision boards. I made a vision board. My ex made a vision board. Hers was a lot better than mine. Mine, well, you know what? I'm not a designer. So I only had like a few things on it. That wasn't anything I really wanted to look at. It wasn't really professional. But there's some people I know who did some very cool vision boards. And I've actually had to remind a couple of them here and there. It's like, hey, remember that vision board you had? Remember you had that thing on there about this? Have you realized that you actually accomplished that? And they've been stunned. They were stunned that I remembered it, but they hadn't really thought back on it. And that's what he said in the movie, is that he had totally forgotten that he had put this thing together. It had been something he'd seen a lot after he did it, but then he moved around a lot. They put it in storage and it came out. So that was his story. Then we have Michael Beckwith. That's it. Doctor of divinal stories, you know, religious stuff. That's I can't think of the word. Anyway, religious leader. And one of the things he said in the movie was that scientifically it had been proven that a positive thought was 5 times stronger than a negative thought. Turns out that's not quite the entire story, because obviously scientists studied these different things, and what they came up with, and I'm reading things off, by the way. I wrote all this stuff down because about a lot of different people. I wasn't going to memorize it all. Anyway, it turns out that when they did a study, they found that positive thoughts spoken aloud, can carry 10 times more power than those that are just left as thoughts. But negative thoughts and negative acts are actually 4 to 7 times higher than positivity. Now, we all know this. I mean, we all get into a depressed mode. Everyone gets depressed at one time. And the thing is that when you're in a depression, you are just so down and you need something positive to help get you back. Whereas if you're positive, you could go 2 or 3 weeks, maybe, being overly positive. And all it takes is one thing. You're driving down the street and bam, you have a flat tire. Boy, you're not positive anymore, especially if you don't have the thing in the car where you can wrench off the thing, you know, the nuts, the lug nuts. You don't have anything to put air back in the tire or to prepare that tire. You don't have a spare in the tire. You're going to be upset. And most probably that's going to take over your life for at least a few days. It could even go on longer than that. So he said that, but it's not necessarily true. Then we got a guy named Dr. John Demartini. And this is a guy who had a learning disability in school. And he was told as a child he would never amount to anything. So what does he do? He figures out how to get himself educated well. He gets his doctorate. And this is another guy who basically went into the self-help field. And he came up with something that they call the Demartini method. It's kind of nice if you got something named after you, which is considered the systematic, predetermined series of mental questions directed towards the objective of assisting an individual to feel present, certainty, and gratitude. Well, that sounds kind of nice. Still, it's one of those kind of things where, you know, a lot of us on our own could probably do something like that. Or, you know, you're reading other things, you're maybe watching certain movies, maybe you're watching some YouTube videos. We could all come up with something like that to help us, but he put it down on paper. That's always important to realize. And he also put it in a book. And, you know, he was actually going to be one of the speakers in this John Assaraf thing, but like I said, I couldn't stick with it. Then there was this guy, Bob Proctor. He's one of the early guys who speaks in the video, and he also closes the movie. And he also closes the movie. And this is an interesting guy because he dropped out of high school. He said that he didn't read a book until he was 26 years old. And the first book he read was called Think and Grow Rich, which is kind of a popular book out there. I've never been able to bring myself to read it. I did read 3 or 4 pages. I said, not ready for it. Don't care. And so there you go. But that's me. So anyhow, at this point, after he read this book, he changed his life. He was poor. He didn't have a lot of money. He was working at some kind of factory. Next thing you know, he gets into the cleaning business. And he gets in the cleaning business, and within the first year, he's got $100,000 in the bank. And then over time, he becomes a millionaire. And, you know, he decides he's going to sell that business and get into self-help. This guy is a total proponent of the concept law of attraction. And that's why he got to talk about it as much in the movie The Secret. And, you know, this was just kind of an amazing thing because it worked for him. Now, he also came out with a book that was called You Were Born Rich, which he published at 50 years old. And it's got mixed reviews. I didn't know about that till I was doing the research. But he does believe in the power of positive thinking. So at least he lived what he believed. That is a very interesting thing to think about when you're looking for motivation. Then we got Jack Canfield. We all know who Jack Canfield is. I don't know anybody, well, okay, maybe younger people. I don't really know for sure. But I don't know anybody my age or within my age group who doesn't know about the Chicken Soup for the Soul book. Well, that's what this guy did. Jack Canfield. Very popular, very engaging kind of guy. Nice guy. He worked at a motivational thing. A guy named W. Clement Stone. He worked at their foundation in Chicago in 1976. And this is where he started to learn this thing about the power of positive thinking and motivation. And 1976 is also the year where he left his first wife while she was pregnant to move in with his masseuse. You know, we can't have everything, right? But it's an interesting thing to think about because supposedly this power of positive thinking basically helped him say, you know what, I'm not happy in this relationship I'm in, and I want to try to find happiness. The timing was bad. Me personally, I think that was unethical to do. But you know what? I don't live that life. I don't live the life of a lot of people who do a lot of things I think are unethical. So anyhow, this is what he did. And he's also a guy who put something out where I thought it was interesting in the movie, where he said that, you know, you think about how you drive across country and it's at night and you have headlights. And he mentioned you could drive basically the entire thing from New York to California, which is not going to be night all the time, but you know, it's just think about it. He said you could drive all the way that kind of distance in the dark by only being able to see about 200 feet in front of you the entire time. That's interesting. That was pretty, you know, when I saw that in the movie, I thought, wow, that's a different perspective, because it shows you that you don't need the big picture. Everything doesn't necessarily need to be a big picture. It's just focusing on what you can do now. What do you need right now? And then you work on other things. If you accomplish that. If you don't, you continue working on that. Or maybe you think of things in a different way. So that's Jack Canfield. Now we've got James Arthur Ray. James Arthur Ray was prominent in this movie. He said a lot of good things. It was very inspirational. It made a lot of sense. But he also kind of turned out to be a con man. I mean, he told people that he did all these different things before that. Turns out he didn't do any of that stuff. This is the guy who back in, I think it was 2009, he was arrested for, well, 3 people died during something that he was doing that he was calling his sweat lodge therapy. Had a bunch of people in there, set it up wrong, they died. Turns out he didn't even have the authority to make anything like that. He set it up all improperly. So he went to jail for a couple of years, and as soon as he got right back out, he started doing the exact same stuff again. He didn't do the sweat lodge anymore, but he started doing the motivational stuff. And I found that interesting because me personally, I said, okay, you know you messed up. You know, you're not my kind of guy, but he has still fostered. I mean, he's still prospered. There's a lot of people who still go to see what he does. And he's a great speaker. You know, it's hard to say that he's not an engaging person, but it's still something you need to think about. Then there's Joe Vitale. And Joe Vitale, this is another guy who totally believes in law of attraction. And it came to him during a time in the 70s when he was homeless. He had tried to put his money into something. Turns out he got scammed. He was so ashamed of it that instead of trying to find his way to get back to where his family lived, he just lived on the streets in Texas for a while. Until one day he decided, nope, it's time for me to change this mindset. And he did. He started believing law of attraction, thinking about everything, decided, yes, you can pursue your goals. And so he got a doctorate in metaphysical science. I don't really know what that is, but there you go. He's an ordained minister. He's something called a Chai Chung healer. I don't know what that is. But he's also a certified hypnotherapist and a metaphysical practitioner. Like I said, I don't know what metaphysical is. But in other words, this is a guy who's done a bunch. And he also donates a whole bunch of money to homeless shelters where he lives, and you know, tries to go to other places around the country to help them figure out ways to generate more money to take care of the helpless. So this is a guy who has put his money into something that he can personally relate to. However, in the movie The Secret, he's also the guy who said that when bad things happen to you, if you don't believe in the law of attraction, if bad things happen, it's still your fault. And he talked about this person where, you know, if you were in a car crash, you're saying, well, how did I manifest that? And he says, well, I'm here to tell you you did. But he doesn't explain why. Personally, I think that's stupidity. That will be the kind of thing that will turn off a lot of people. And we're probably some people who were turned off by that. Because you can't control what other people do. I mean, you may be able to, like I said, manifest yourself in certain ways. There's a lot of folks in that movie who talked about how their lives changed financially and how the reactions of other people did, who they had never met until something different came. I think there are some of those things that just don't fit. That's me. And then we've got Lisa Nichols. And Lisa Nichols took over Esther, and I can't remember her husband's name. But anyway, they did this thing where they were motivational people. They'd been doing it for a good long time. They're big in the movie. And what happened is that Esther decided that the secret people were looking to just talk more about money. And there were these contracts she wanted to sign. She said, no, take me out. I don't even want to be in any of it. So this lady who took it over from her and basically said most of the things that she had said in the original movie, Lisa Nichols. Now, Lisa Nichols is also in the original. By the way, I have 3 copies of it. Don't hate. But Lisa Nichols, she was 27 years old at one point, had $12 in the bank account. She was a single mother. She was getting money from the government. And just one day, it hit her. She says, no, this is not the life I want. It's not the life I wanted ever. And she started thinking about what she wanted to do. Decided she wanted to be a public speaker. Didn't necessarily know her topic, but that's what she decided to do. So she became this public speaker. She found ways to go to different local organizations just to speak. And that's what she did. And in 2010, she created a company called Motivating the Masses. And, she has done really well. She travels around the country doing these kinds of things. And also she was one of the people who was supposed to speak during this John Assaraf thing that I left. There you go. Then we got Mike Dooley. Now, I actually did his workbook, 30 days workbook. I did it at the beginning of this year, and I did it at the beginning of 2019. So it was this 30-day live your life workbook where every day you have an assignment that you have to do. And in 2019, I was going good for a while, but then some family things started to fall apart. And even though I, finished the entire thing, I didn't have the same kind of feeling that I had this year when I did it. And I have, indirectly, I can sit here right now and tell you that my life right now, this is June, is actually better than it was in January when I started doing the book. And he does this kind of thing where, he sends out a daily thing. I don't subscribe to that. My friend does. But, this is another guy who believes that you can put things in your mind that you want to do, law of attraction, and it will bring things to you. I'm coming back to that later on. Then we got Morris Goodman. This guy's story was fascinating because he's known as the Miracle Man because March 10th, 1981, he crashed a plane. Ooh. So he crashed a plane. He was paralyzed. He couldn't move. He had broken his trachea. He couldn't drink. He couldn't swallow. He was on the respirator. And they told him he will never recover from that. He will always need the machine to keep him alive if that's what he wanted to do. Well, in his mind, he said, nah, I'm not buying that. And he had learned how to communicate with others by blinking his eyes for the alphabet. They teach that, by the way. It's one of those few things that if you can't do anything else, it turns out you can always still blink your eyes. So he blinked his eyes and he gave this message saying that it was his goal to be out of the hospital by Christmas. Well, they moved him to a couple of different facilities, but he left the last facility he was in on November 13th, 1981. They were amazed. They said, oh, this is impossible. He said, no, this was his thought. This was his belief that was going to be his goal. He didn't have anything else he could do, by the way. So, what he did was remarkable. I mean, obviously, the first thing he had to do was work on his trachea so that he could breathe on his own so they could get rid of that. And then everything else, it shows you that if you're motivated enough and you've got a certain goal, you can get there no matter where you're at. And then the final person I'm going to mention is Loral Langemeier because I actually have her book called The Millionaire Maker. And one of the things that she talked about a lot in that book was what has become the concept of the side hustle. And what she said is that, there's two things you need to learn how to do. You need to, one, learn how to budget your money so that you can make sure you pay all your bills and everything. But two, find ways to increase your income, whether it's a part-time job or whether it's a new job or whatever. And she talked about this concept, and she didn't call it side hustle, but that's what we call it now, where you try to figure out, well, what can I do that's not work-related that I may be able to make some money from? And so you found people who said, well, I can tutor on this, or, I can make pottery things, or, I can make crafts, I can design clothes, I can do whatever. And a lot of those people found out, not overwhelming majority, but maybe, 10% of them found out, hey, I can make a living off of this because I can make more money doing this than the job I'm doing, and did, and left. It's what you focus on and how you feel about it, and that's really important. So let's come back to these things about motivation, positivity, self-help, and the law of attraction. The first guy who I really loved listening to, this guy named Zig Ziglar. He still has a whole bunch of videos on YouTube. He passed away, I think, maybe 10 years ago. I don't remember exactly. But he told all these different types of things. He was a positive kind of guy. He was Southern, so he had that accent, and he had certain things that he would say that were definitely only Southernisms, and he was fascinating. I loved it. The only thing that I disagreed with him, because, well, I'm atheist, is that he believed that if you have a spiritual attachment to God and Christ, that it will make your life better. Well, being atheist, that's not my belief. And seeing what's happening in the last couple of years, I'm thinking, you know what? You've totally convinced me even more that shouldn't be my belief. With that said, however, the basic idea was having a belief in something and thinking positive. And what he said when it came to the thing about positivity is, he said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything is going to be great if you think about positivity all the time. I'm not going to tell you that you're going to do great things if you think about positivity all the time. What I am going to tell you is that you're going to feel better and you're going to do things better if you think positively about those things than negatively about those things. Mind blown. Totally. That is so true. So, like I said, you talk about motivation. What can you find that's going to help motivate you? I made my little mantra. I had it on the side of my computer for a while. That was something that worked for me. Positivity. What can you think of that helps positivity? Well, what have you done in your life? Or what have you done recently that you can say, you know what, that was a positive step forward? For me, I started sleeping better. I've worked on it this entire time since the beginning of the year. And right now I'm sleeping better. I set a goal of trying to sleep at least 6 hours a day, 6 hours a night. Yeah, I guess that's right. And early on, I may have made it maybe once or twice a month. And then I got to a point where last month I made it 10 nights out of the 30 days or 31 days of May. And so far in June, well, I'm 3 of 4. So 75%. I don't know if that's going to last, but I'm positive about it. This is how I feel it's going to work. Self-help. Well, we can't always sit around waiting for someone else to come up and fix our thing for us. Self-help basically says, do I need a book? Do I need a movie? Do I need a recording of something? What can I do, or what can I find that will help me to move forward? Some people do not motivation. What is it? Oh God, I can't think of it. It'll come to me. You get to your early 60s, that just happens. In essence, you sit down and you close your eyes and you think about it. But then the law of attraction. It's another interesting concept. I mean, overall, the law of attraction does not say that all you have to do is think about something and you're going to get it. What it's going to do for you, however, is you're going to think about what it is you want in your life, and then you're going to figure out ways to possibly get there. And I've said this part for years. Look, if you're 5'1", you weigh 300 pounds, and your goal is to be the center for the Los Angeles Lakers, you know what? That ain't happening. You can be as positive as you want to. You can put as much work as you want to. It ain't going to happen. However, if you're 60 years old and you decide, you know what, I think I want to be a dentist. And there's a lot of people who will try to talk you out of that. But you know what? You can be a dentist by 65 if you're 60 by studying. You go back to school for it. You go through all these other kind of things. You can do it. You could be a lawyer at a later age. You could be a painter at a later age. Law of attraction. You have to first, like I said, you have to get something in your mind, think about how it's going to go, how you're going to get there. You can't just sit there and wait for it to happen. You obviously have to take actions in order to get to those things. By the way, the word was meditation. I told you it would come back to me. Still, you have to be willing to do something. And if you're not willing to do anything, yeah, it's not going to work. It's going to fail. So that's my story. And yes, it's a long video, but I've put in some timestamps so you can jump around if you want to. But I wanted to put this out there because I wanted to do something new on this channel. I wanted to put something out to hopefully make some folks feel better. If you're not feeling well already mentally, if you're having some life problems and such, I want you to feel better. I want you to see how some people got there. I don't want you to fall into the trap of totally believing every single thing that someone who's a guru tells you, because everything doesn't work that way for everybody. But the Zig Ziglar line I told you, that will work for everybody. That's my thought. Y'all let me know what you think. If you made it through this entire video, I'll talk to you another time.